Hi guys, as I told you before, I prepared some information about does our bikes do our bikes have to start with problems. And actually there are so many things that I had to prepare a list to not forget about anything. I might not include everything here, but I think it's almost 90% or even more of possible problems. So first question is, do our bikes have problems with starting? And answer is yes, but they can be minimalized, or they can be treated. Hi guys, as I said before, today is the time to talk about starting issues with our bikes. Do SXVs and RXVs have problems with starting? Yes and no. Yes, because mainly there are a lot of issues with bikes, engines, or setup itself. And no, if bike is in a really good condition and every possible problem is fixed or maintained properly, they will start fine. Okay, so there are so many things. I had to prepare a list so not to forget about anything. It's probably complete, but I might forget about something. If you think you know something else, just please write in comment below this video. Okay, so let's start. First thing, which is the most important, is the battery. This is a very crucial thing, because if there is not enough power or amperage in battery, starter will turn engine too slow. So what is the minimal rotation or RPM for engine to start? When we set our display for to show RPM during crank time, it has to have 400 or more. If it shows less, it means that engine is spinning too slow and there is a big probability that it won't start. Second thing is starter itself. Stock starters are fine until they are completely okay. There can be problem with brushes. There can be burnt puff in a commutator. So if your starter is cranking hard, just try to not overheat it, and stock starter is perfectly fine and good. You don't have to buy any bigger starters or modified starters. If your engine is correctly set up, it's in good condition, you don't need any better starter than OEM. Okay, let's go next. I told you about weak starter, about battery, about 400 RPMs. Okay, so there is one more thing that might cause that engine is spinning too slow. The primal position of throttle bodies during cranking period when engine is cold. Usually it is recommended to set it in around between 10 to 12.5% of full throttle opening. What it means, and this is okay when you don't have a solenoid valve in your airbox. If you have a solenoid valve, you don't even have to open your throttle bodies, because additional air will be provided through this solenoid itself. So this is important. You have two options to provide such opening for throttle bodies. In older bikes like 2006, 2007, there is a yellow knob on the throttle, but it is tricky because to set a proper throttle body's opening, throttle cables has to be tightened at a certain level, and this is tricky because if you don't have valid software like or cable like TuneBoy or XV Tuner, you won't be able to determine if your opening is fine or not. But anyway, you need to know that to start bike, throttle bodies has to be open a little bit, up to 12.5%. Okay, so this one is here. What else? There might be issues with spread clutch assembly. What does it mean? In our bikes, connection between starter and engine or magneto is via two sprockets, and I saw few bikes that had problems with those sprockets. First problem is that some tooth or teeth on those sprockets were just broken or snapped, so starter was not able to spin them correctly. The second thing, this is I think from the gear was changed in newer bikes with some clutch inside. So when engine made some huge resistance, instead of frying starter, this gear was spinning inside itself to avoid just frying starters. So that's the reason why it can be like that. Of course, it can be in purpose. Let's say that your engine has some problem. For example, I don't know, valve snapped and engine is stuck, and you try to start it, but there is so huge resistance on pistons touching, for example, valve to the heads. So instead of frying your starter, it will just make this weird noise. To check it, you can just put your engine to 5th gear, put up your rear wheel and try to rotate your engine using your rear wheel. So that's the possibility to check if your engine is stuck or not. If it's not stuck, you will be able to rotate your engine. You must consider if this gear might be used and you need to replace it. Very common thing here is also one-way spark clutch. It is located in flywheel. You need to take out flywheel, which is under a magneto cover. It is tightened by 6 bolts. Those bolts are usually and should be Loctite. So to unscrew them, you need to hit your flywheel to 175 degrees for 15 minutes, and then you will be able to unscrew them. Anyway, after you disassemble flywheel, you can check the condition of 3 things. First thing is bearing itself. It must be in good condition. The teeth has to be, with no damage. And there are 2 surfaces on which this spark clutch bearing is working on. If the surface is not smooth, there are some rough places, or it can be on a gear, or there is a ring outside this magneto. So both has to be checked and, if necessary, replaced. So I talked about this one here, standard magneto. Okay. And going further, your engine must be in a good condition. If it's in bad condition, for example, there is a lot of usage on between piston and cylinder. There are wrong valve clearances, or valves are used too much, and you are not able to build up compression, and your decompressors are used. Okay, about decompressors, those are things which are inside cams and during crank up. So let's say under 1500 RPM they are staying open, which means that they are pushing a little bit exhaust valves, so they, let's say, release pressure inside the cylinder to avoid generating 12 bars and doing only about 5 to 6 bars. So once those decompressors are used, this this amount of released pressure might be not enough. For example, they are working only to 8 bars. So our engine is a race bike. Sorry, it's a race engine. The starter is small. It is designed to work only when the full engine is completely working fine. So if those decompressors are used, there will be too much resistance in cylinders, which will cause the engine spinning too slow. Okay, going next. I told about valve clearances, bed compression, timing. Timing is very important because it can be set in the wrong way. There are two ways to set up timings in our bikes. First one is for Screamer, which is a default one, and second one is a Bing Bang, which is a default one for MXV. But some of mechanics are not aware about that, and it's actually often, you can often see that engines are set up to the wrong timing settings. There are a lot of tutorials how to do it, so I won't talk about it right now, but it's worth to check. What is the main symptom? Engine will start, it will run for 10 to 15 seconds, and then one of cylinders will drop, and after some time even all engine will drop. That's the first symptom to realize that our timing is bad. There is one thing that it is nice to see on the beginning. For example, let's say you have a nice battery, your cables are tight, there is no loose on connectors, on battery, on starter, on relay. Your bike is cranking fine, but there is no sign of life. Okay, so the first thing what I would do, I would check if there is a spark. If there is a spark, engine is cranking fine, just put some brake cleaner to airbox and see if it will help a little bit with trying to start. If there is some life going on, there like a small booms from, or how do you call it, pops from exhaust, it means that there is problem with fueling. But for example, if you will spray this brake cleaner into the airbox and there is a spark but there is no reaction at all, it is highly probability the problem is that there is a shredded key on flywheel. When we install our flywheel magneto on our crank, there is only one way to install it. There is a key, but sometimes if it's not tightened properly, magneto through its rotating force can shred this key, and this causes that ignition is placed in a wrong time. For example, during exhaust stroke. In this way, even there is a spark, there is a fuel, there won't be any life in the engine. Okay, so that's important. And those were actually mechanical issues, which you can actually check by yourself. Not everything, of course, but most of them you can establish and check if it's something wrong with bike by yourself. There's one more thing: throttle body synchronization. If they are offset too much, it still will be a problem to run bike. Okay, that's a issue. If they are offset a little bit, you will start it, but idle will be rough. Okay, never mind. Okay, let's go through electrical issues right now. And here we have the thing that we need to have one of three cables. The first one is axone, which is default Aprilia service cable, which you need, of course, also an Aprilia software. I didn't have any chance to work with it, but there are, of course, two other possibilities. First one is TuneBoy. It has plenty of options, and it's perfectly fine and enough to tune your bike. But there is one problem. It's only for your bike. Actually, not for your bike, but for your ECU. Each ECU has its own dedicated number, and when you apply for a license from TuneBoy, they ask you to send your ECU number, and based on that, they will just generate a license to you, and only you can use this cable and this software. Cable, actually, no. Cable can be borrowed to another guy, but the guy has to have his own license to his own ECU. And third, and in my opinion the best option, is XV tuner cable, which was developed some time ago by Quest from Aprilia Racing. Never mind, from USA or from Canada. And right now, in charge of this software and cable is Alan from Transnorth, from North America, and you can buy. I will post a link below below this video where you can buy this cable from official source. And Alan is a nice guy. He always helps. So okay, you can always ask him. And XV Tuner is a very nice tool. It allows you to set up your engine from 0 to perfect, from basic settings to custom map with custom fueling, injection, offset, timing, ignition, anything you want. So going further, first thing which can be bad regarding let's say mapping is map itself. When somebody insert a wrong map, it is hard to start bike. It can be adjusted, of course, but you have to have some knowledge about it. Second thing is TPS settings. TPS is the throttle position sensor, and it has to be set correctly. When we set up throttle position minimal, the screw in for idle has to be unscrewed, because some people are using value as TPS minimum when the bike is set for idle. It is wrong. The correct procedure is that the throttle bodies has to be completely closed, but only through idle screw. There are a few more screws in throttle bodies, but do not touch them. Just use the idle screw until you see the TPS value is not going any further down. So typical value for TPS min is from 38 to 45, I guess. It depends on initial TPS sensor position and throttle body synchronization. And maximal is easy. You just need to open your throttle bodies in maximum position and click TPS max. Okay, there are also two possibilities to change map after it is loaded. It is CO, which is basically the range of idle. Usually, sometimes it's only to 3000, sometimes it's only idle, but generally once your bike is warm and ready to go, you just turn off the bike, turn on ignition and press a button, and when bike is warm, it has to start with one touch of button, like this. If it has to crank few times, just try to add some CO, 1%, 2%, and check results. What is this important for cold start? The cold start is acting is working on a warm side. So once you have a really good starting bike as warm, it is a good condition to start it as cold. If bike is starting at warm very poorly, it will definitely have problems to start when cold. Okay, so small adjustment of CO is very important. Offset is actually the same as CO, but the range of changes is through all RPM. So when you change F offset, it also affects CO range. To visual it, just imagine that you have, let's say, 100. It's just imagination, okay? The value for idle is 100. When you put 5% more on CO, it will have 105. But if you add 5% more on offset, it will have 110 or 111, something like that. Okay. So those two values are very important. And there is one more thing. Most of maps have a limiter, which is called rev counts between fuel injection. This is because engineers thought that when engine is cold, oil has to go to all components before it's finally started. It's not that it is very necessary, because on some maps like solenoid maps or Alice Racing map, this count is minimized to 2. And actually I advise to do it. There is a simple table and there are some temperature ranges, and for example for temperature, I don't really know the correct value right now, but let's say below 0 degrees there has to be 8 revolutions of engines between fuel is injected. And in most of our bikes, when there is a 0 degrees and there is a 0 W60 oil inside, and for example someone did not open the throttle correctly, after 5 turns the battery is probably dead. So it will even not spray fuel inside of engine. So to avoid that, we can upload map with only 2 revolution counts or even 0. I advise not to do it 0, because 0 it's only for warm engine. But when engine is cold, let's have 2 revolutions at least. Okay, so if you have any questions, just feel free to leave a comment. Sorry for my bad English, it's not my primal language. I try to talk as good as I can. Yeah, so if you have any questions, just write me in the comments, like this video, subscribe if you're not subscribing yet, and take care.